Froch said it best when he said Triple G's best years are behind him. I kind of agree with that. Even though I think he's still a dangerous fighter and he's still a big threat, I do think that this is perfect timing for me. It's similar to when I fought Peter Quillin. You know, Gabe Rosado, in my opinion, was on the verge of beating him if he didn't get that cut on his eye. So I was like, man, I hope this guy doesn't do it. I want to be the guy that does it. Because around that time, I was calling Peter Quillin out. It's a similar thing for me. Even though Kell Brook wasn't close to beating Triple G, he did expose a lot of things as far as movement, speed, ring generalship. He just didn't have the sheer size to be effective, especially once that eye got hurt, he was done for. But he did, for me, in my opinion, expose a lot of different things. I don't know if I have a similar style like Kell Brook, but I do know that I bring a lot to the table also that would be a problem to Triple G. But like I said, it's just about going in there and proving, going in there and getting the job done. I could talk about it all day, but Saturday night, you know, it's up to me to step up to the plate. Those are the words of Danny Jacobs ahead of his fight on Saturday night against Triple G, Gennady Golovkin. Now, I've got a couple things to say about this. Normally, I don't like when fighters are talking about their opponent being past it or over the hill, so on and so forth, particularly when their opponent is a champion, because there's the possibility there that they're not preparing themselves mentally for what's ahead, sufficiently at least. I believe you should go into a fight believing that you're going to face that fighter at their absolute best. That you shouldn't be thinking, oh, he's not quite the same as he used to be. Now, different fighters do different things to give themselves confidence. And perhaps that's what Danny Jacobs is doing here, or perhaps it's just what he genuinely believes. But generally, I don't like hearing fighters say stuff like that. Although sometimes fighters have their ear to the ground. They hear the rumors, they hear the word on the grapevine, and they also see what goes on in the ring during their opponent's fights. And they kind of get their heads up that the guy isn't actually the same. A good example of this was recently. When Tony Bellew fought David Haye in the lead up to the fight, he kept saying constantly that David Haye's not the same guy that he used to be. That he's been partying, he's been living the life. He hasn't been the same guy in training camps. He's been in nightclubs, he's been doing all kind of stuff. And you'll find out when I face him that he's not the same guy that fought Derek Chisora. He's not the same guy that he used to be. Been out the ring too long without proper competition. And everything that Tony Bellew said about David Haye turned out to be true. He exposed in the very first round exactly what he'd been saying in the lead up to the fight, that David Haye wasn't the same guy. Tony Bellew was bang on the money there. Now, obviously, David Haye and Gennady Golovkin are in very different situations. Gennady Golovkin is an active champion, a long-reigning champion, a guy who is close to his prime, if not in his prime. Whereas David Haye is a guy who's been out the ring for a long time, a lot of injuries, inactivity, hasn't been fighting quality opposition. So, yeah, they're in two very, very different situations. However, what Danny Jacobs said there about Golovkin maybe not looking particularly good in his past few fights, especially the Kell Brook fight, I think there's something to say for that. Golovkin himself only gave himself, I think, a 3 or 4 out of 10 for that performance. And Abel Sanchez said something similar, his trainer. So anybody looking at the Kell Brook fight, even if you're a Golovkin fan, and trying to say that Golovkin didn't make mistakes and, you know, didn't look vulnerable defensively, you'd have to be deluded, because he did, because even Golovkin and his trainer said the same thing. The thing is, why? Was it because he didn't have enough respect for Kell Brook? Was it because he was ill maybe? There were rumors of that. What was the reason that he performed the way he did? Maybe he's just slowing down, or maybe it's because Kell Brook, being a welterweight, being fast, was able to exploit chinks in Golovkin's armor, which have always been there. Who knows what the case is? What I will say is this. I believe that somebody like Golovkin, who is as destructive as he is, to some extent, fights to the level of not necessarily the opposition, but to the level of the event. If he feels that, no, actually, the level of the threat, let's just put it that way. If he's in a big fight where there is a perceived threat, and he feels there's some kind of threat, and he feels it's the big stage, and he needs to look his best, and he's in there with somebody that can really fight, then I think he raises his game. I think we saw that against David Lemieux, because there was no defensive lapses against David Lemieux, or very few. He minimized all that. And that was his first ever pay-per-view. So here with Danny Jacobs, his second pay-per-view in the United States, I expect the same from him. I think he's going to be pushing harder in camp than he was in the Kell Brook fight. And I think he's going to leave no stone unturned, and he's going to try and be immaculate in this fight. I'm expecting to see the very best of Gennady Golovkin. I have said previously, and I'll stand by this, I don't think Golovkin has got too much longer at the top because of the way that he has been fighting, and also because of his age, because of his style. Fighters who apply a lot of pressure and are very aggressive don't tend to age as well as technical boxers. This is historically proven time and time again. They tend to have a much shorter shelf life. Now, with the amateur background that Golovkin has, there is the possibility that he could switch it up as he gets older and actually become more of a boxer, particularly if he moves up in weight. That remains to be seen. But if he continues fighting in the way that he does, and remember, it's not just in the ring that he's fighting this way, it's also in sparring and training, where he's taking shots and coming forward, and that kind of stuff takes a toll on your body, far more so than if you're fighting a technical fight and sparring a technical spar. So I don't think he's going to be up at the top for that much longer. I give it maybe 18 months before, sometime inside the next 18 months, I think Golovkin is going to, if not lose, he's going to show very clear signs of deterioration. I think he's already, 35 years old now or something like that. So sometime in the next 18 months, if he doesn't lose, he's at least going to have people saying, you know what, Golovkin's not the same anymore. I believe that's going to happen. Will it be Saturday night against Jacobs? We'll see. But personally, I think he's going to raise his game. And I think he has to raise his game. I think if the Triple G who turned up and fought Kell Brook is the guy who turns up against Danny Jacobs on Saturday night, then there's a very real chance of an upset. Because that Triple G was reckless, making a lot of mistakes, and he was in there with a welterweight, not with a big middleweight like Danny Jacobs, who hits a lot harder than Kell Brook, who's a lot physically stronger than Kell Brook. One of the things which I think Danny Jacobs, if he's smart, should be doing against Triple G is pushing Triple G back in the clinches, using his physicality, roughing Triple G up, trying to somewhat emulate what Evander Holyfield did to Mike Tyson, bullying the bully. That's what he needs to try and do. And also another thing is he may want to try and invest in Triple G's body when he can in spots. These are things which a destructive puncher like Triple G will not be used to. He's not used to somebody hitting him in the body. He's not used to somebody pushing him back and manhandling him in the clinches. And that's what you have to do. And anybody who thinks it can't be done is very naive indeed. It was done to Mike Tyson. Believe you me, it can be done to Triple G. So, yeah, we'll see how the fight unfolds. But those are my thoughts on these particular comments from Danny Jacobs. Perhaps this is what he just truly believes, that looking at the past few fights, Triple G is not quite the same, but maybe he is trained for the very, very best Triple G. If he hasn't, then he's in serious trouble himself. So we'll find out soon enough. Let me know how you feel in the comment section below, people. It's happening. I'm out.